guys, welcome back to another episode of Let's Play Planet Coaster featuring Barrier Blast. Today we're going to be working on the station for the unnamed wooden roller coaster. But as always, I have a few announcements to make, and this time it's going to be regarding the Nationals tournament that I had, the reason why I wasn't here for a little while, and just a few other interesting facts. So to start off, Cal Poly officially ranks number 12 in the United States for all club tennis teams, and what happened was, our first day, which is our pool round day, to find out what bracket you're in the second and third day, we won all of our 3 matches, so we ended up getting into gold bracket. But unfortunately, our first match for gold bracket was our arch nemesis for Cal Poly, UCLA. And ironically, we won our sectionals, which means that we had beaten them before in the finals for our sectionals, but we just so happened to come out not as strong as we had expected to, and we lost to UCLA our first match of gold bracket, so we were knocked into the consolation round for gold bracket. The second match of the day, which was against Vanderbilt, was to our favor, so we had won the first round of consolation round, but we lost against University of Florida, ironically, and in Florida, as our second round in consolation. So for the third day, we had to play for the 11th and 12th place, but unfortunately, again, we didn't come out as strong as we'd hoped, but we lost against Cornell. They ended up being a relatively decent school, but yeah, so we took 12th place instead of 11th out of that day. But from that whole experience, even though we ended up not taking the spot that we had hoped to, it's okay, because honestly, that whole experience was really just a team bonding time, the time to get around and meet other people. It was just a really great experience overall. Got to go to Cocoa Beach. I got to meet a few people from the University of Texas, Austin. It was really, really awesome, that whole trip. I mean, as much as I don't like flying in planes, it really didn't matter too much, especially because every time we had to do layovers for flights, it was always fun to like hang out with the team, and you know, we ended up playing a bunch of basketball in the Facebook games section, which has now become our terrible new addiction. We always check our Facebook group and see people posting new scores for the whatever basketball game we're playing at the moment. And honestly, at the end of the day, that whole trip just really got everybody to be a lot closer to each other, and it's something that I don't think anyone is going to forget. The nationals trip is always a great time to bond with the team, and if you're fortunate or lucky enough to play on the A team at any school, being able to go to nationals is always like one of the most fun things that people look forward to. So enough about tennis. On the other hand, talking more about the video itself, I started working on a station for the unnamed wooden roller coaster, which I'm still not entirely sure what I want to call. But the station that I made for this roller coaster, I think personally, is probably one of my best creations for at least station, as far as stations go. I mean, I think it came out with more detail than I anticipated, but the amount of detail that I think is comparable to other creators, and I think that's kind of where I was going with this. Like, I know I'm relatively experienced in making generic style buildings, but this time I really wanted to go for a very kind of unique alpine theme, and I think this building cuts that mark, and I think that I'm finally achieving the level of detail in my stations that I'd like to do in the future, or at least continuing in the future. This time for the roof, instead of using the preset pieces that are normally used for roofs, I tried to completely make my own custom roof, which was something new to me, but I definitely think it came out better than what I would have had if I had just used the normal generic roof pieces. Because at least in this case, when I was able to create this custom roof, I was able to make it look pretty much the exact way I'd want it to. Sometimes using the normal preset roof pieces kind of limits you to what you are and aren't able to do. So this time I figured, you know what, I have wood, and my coaster is a wooden coaster anyway, so may as well just make a completely custom station instead. I will make note that doing the custom roof obviously made making the building take a lot longer. It took a little bit of time out of perfecting the parts that looked like they were kind of just sticking out and stuff like that. But you know what? Honestly, when you spend extra time working on it, it almost becomes kind of therapeutic. I'm not gonna lie. It feels really good when you just kind of sit there and just create something, and at the end of the day, you just kind of look at it and you're like, wow, this turned out actually really, really good. And honestly, that's kind of how I felt about this whole station. Even though, like, it did take me about like 2.5, 3 hours to make, which is kind of why this video is a little longer. I mean, honestly, it looks a lot better than what I would have expected had I just used basic pieces. The other thing I got to do is experiment with a few pieces that I don't normally use for the way that I used them in this video, such as using wood planks to create a wood floor for the ground of the station. I know generally you can use like paths that connect to your station change the flooring on the station, but this time I figured I would just do a complete manual version of doing that. So I don't know, at least to me it has more depth than just using whatever texture is added to like the station when you connect paths to it. At this point in the video though, you're not seeing that yet, but you are seeing like the little cables and stuff that I usually use for adding the extra detail inside the station. At this point, you also get to see me put the rocks at the bottom of the station, which I think look quite a bit better than just using like the castle wall or whatever I used previously. I kind of just put the castle wall as just a filler just so I could put something there. But yeah, I definitely anticipated using the rocks because, at least to me, gives the building a little bit more three-dimensional, like, I don't know, three-dimensional style to it. I mean, obviously the building itself is in 3 dimensions, but you know what I'm trying to say. It gives more depth to the building, I guess, probably the better way to put it. Another thing I wanted to talk about though, and this is like another announcement I wanted to talk about, is that I have finally made a decision on what I want to do to upgrade my computer. So I did recently order a Z170 motherboard by Asus, specifically the Asus Z170M Plus. So I do plan to overclock the processor I get, which is going to be the i7-6700K. I'm not sure when I'll order it, but my anticipated expectation for it is that I'm going to continue looking through eBay and just trying to see what sellers are available and what prices they're selling it at. I did at one point find a seller selling an i7-6700K for about $285, and I thought that was a fantastic deal. And it was for a brand new one too, not a used one. The only problem though is when I ordered it along with the motherboard, I don't know, I guess the seller at some point just took it off the selling list for his site, so when I ordered it, it never went through. So I don't have the processor with me, although it was supposed to come in at the same time as my motherboard did, and that was actually today. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to pick up the product from my post office since I had another project for an actual class that I was doing, so I ended up finishing pretty late and I didn't get to pick up my package, but that's okay. But yeah, so I figured out of all the processors I was looking at, the 6700K kind of fit the bill a little bit better for me than some of the other ones. I was thinking about the 7700K, but I figured, I don't know, I'm not really paying for that much more performance than the 6700K. Like, in fact, they use the same exact chipset. I'm not going to go into details on what that actually means, but or not the same chipset, but they use the same architecture kind of for the processor. It's just one's clocked a little bit higher than the other, or in other words, one's just slightly faster factory speed than the other one. But they pretty much are the exact same processor, and if I overclock the 6700K, which I plan to do, I'll pretty much get the exact same performance as the 7700K. So that's kind of my reasoning for getting that, but it's going to be a while before I actually get it. So yeah, we'll have to see. Right now, I'll just be kind of looking through eBay until I find a good deal, and or if I don't find a good deal by the time I'm done with school, I'll just save my money and buy a brand new one from a store or something at some point, whatever is more convenient for me. So we'll have to see, but I definitely want to buy a brand new one. I figured, you know, if this is a computer that I'm going to be upgrading and never upgrading for a while, right? I don't want to buy a used processor. Like, at least to me, that makes like 0 sense. Like, this is my, I guess, my baby, right? Like, you don't buy a used, you know, a used one, right? You get one brand new, right? I don't know. Maybe that's a bad metaphor, but I'm just trying to, you know, I'm just saying, you know, like if I'm gonna get this, like it may as well just be brand new. Like I don't want to take a chance of getting a used one, hope that it works perfectly. Like I suppose if this was like a secondhand PC, then I wouldn't care. But this is pretty much like my go-to computer, and I want it to be exactly the way it should be. Don't want to take any chances of it being not perfect. So I don't know. That's just how I feel. I do apologize in advance if this narration's a little bit less energetic than what I would normally do. It is like 9:30 in the evening for me right now. I just finished a project, or finished working on a memo for a project that I'm working on in one of my marketing classes, so I'm a little bit drained, plus a little bit of jet lag from being in Florida and then coming back to California, but that's okay though. I still wanted to make sure I do this narration so that I could upload this video for you guys, especially since this is definitely one of my more interesting, my more interesting parts of this build, since I think I put a pretty good amount of detail in like the whole station, the queue line area. At this point in the video, you are seeing me work on the shrubbery for the bush, well, not the bush, the queue line itself. But yeah, I mean, I think it turned out pretty well by the end of it. You'll see that later on. The one thing that took me a while though, and you'll see this later on in the video, is I tried to put the wood panels on the ground as well when I tried to make the cattle pen area for this line. and that was a pain in the ass, let me tell you. I was trying so hard to like make sure that it was lined up and stuff, but as I had mentioned in the previous video, sometimes clicking on objects doesn't really do anything. Like I try to click on the arrows and it doesn't do anything. And this time I had to like zoom into the ground like numerous times to like click the actual object. And even then, sometimes I wouldn't get it. So it took me a long time to do it. But you know what though? I think that in the 1.2 update, which came out when I was away, hopefully will help me with some of this stuff, because I think that they've added like no collision and stuff. Although I don't really know if that has anything, or I don't think it particularly pertains to my issue in this case, but I do think in some cases when I want to add wood pieces and stuff to the station itself, I won't have to worry about it being in that red zone for the collision. But anyways, at this point you see here, I made a big mistake by trying to make the wood panels on the ground before making a building. So what happened was each of those wood panels were individual, and if you know the pain of having to deal with individual pieces in Planet Coaster, especially on top of the fact that I said earlier couldn't really click the actual objects, I had to click them individually without using the control click to grab all the pieces at once. But anyways, aside from the little rant about how I had to deal with that, I did start using the little like cables as part of the cattle pen area, or the cattle pen part of the line. I used actual wood pieces to create the queue line area itself, since I took off the default wood fences that they usually add on the ground. Because you have the little options in the side, the advanced settings for the paths, you can turn off those fences and stuff so that they're not added automatically. Figured that would be easier to do than having to put them over what they were already there for. So I just made my own this time. I hope my narration hasn't been too boring. I know, again, like I said, I'm a little tired doing this narration, but I hope that in the next episode I'll definitely have more to talk about in terms of like the actual content behind the video. This one was pretty self-explanatory. Like I had mentioned in the previous video, I'll be working on the queue line and station in this one, and that's exactly pretty much what I did for this episode particularly. But as you see, I did add quite a bit of detail and tried to make sure that all of this was more or less custom. I felt like having custom stuff in the game definitely adds to the atmosphere of the whole realism and stuff like that. Definitely takes away the typical Planet Coaster look to it, if you know what I mean. Sometimes when you use too many of the default stuff, it just kind of looks too much like everyone else's park. So I tried to avoid that by just making everything custom for this one. So in closing, I want to thank you guys for sticking around and watching this episode, even though it took a little bit longer to make, or at least post. And I hope to see you guys in the next episode when we start working on the scenery for this wooden roller coaster. And I think that will turn out really well, just kind of like the last time we worked on Fireball's scenery. So I'll see you guys in the next video, and enjoy the cinematic shots for this unnamed wooden roller coaster, as well as the scenery for the queue line and the station.
Your heart to shake up.